Well, I feel like this has been such a long time coming. I mean, even the fact that we're in the same room together officially, because our paths have crossed so many times over the last almost 5 years. Meg Yelaney, welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm so honored to be here. I got so excited when I was like looking at my calendar this week. I was like, wait, I get to podcast with Jess. It does feel like a long time coming. And I'm very, very honored to be here right now.
Well, something that you might not know, and obviously the listeners don't know this, is that on my old Instagram page, which I ran for, I don't know, 8 years, back in the day, I actually found it April 29th of 2019, April 29th of 2019. I saved one of your posts. And I actually had saved a couple of your posts right around that time. And here it
Oh
is.
my God.
This is little baby Meg on her computer. Look at you on your little laptop. So
Oh my
cute.
God.
Funny enough,
I
wearing
remember that photo
stripes,
shoot.
just like you're
I
wearing stripes
remember.
now. And you're talking about how, you took your business from 5K a month to 20K a month consistently in all the tools. And it's obviously launch content, right? And you're talking about the
Yeah.
Client Attraction University, which at the time you were launching. And the funny thing is, I actually saved 3 posts of yours all from that week, April 15th, 2019,
Oh.
talking about the genius way to create copy that converts and how to use their language and not your language. And then there's another one about, do you feel annoying? Do you feel like you're bugging people? Now, obviously, sitting where I am today, I'm kind of wondering, well, that's interesting. Like, why did I save that? What about that did I save? If I could go back
Yeah.
to almost 5 years ago, obviously I saved it because I thought it was really good content, or the way that you wrote it was really good, or how you were unapologetically showing up. I thought was like, wow, this is so incredible. Maybe it was the picture that I liked. Whatever the reason was, I got to kick this episode off with just saying publicly, the reason that your business is where it is today is because you still post the same type of content and you say the same thing over and over again, and you do the boring basic things over and over again. And while your beliefs and the way that you teach these things may have changed slightly over the years, the foundation, like, because I know your business, it's still there. And what you were saying in 2019 is not that far off from what you're saying today. So one, I just want to publicly edify you because that is not easy to do. Two, I know that I've personally struggled with that consistency of, not consistency of posting. That's easy for me because it's a muscle and I've worked it so much, right? The consistency of sort of saying the same thing over and over and over, with getting over the fear of sounding boring, or like I haven't evolved, or a broken record, or she's so old school. Like, I can't believe she's still teaching that methodology. And then number three, just the sheer consistency, because that's the part that people usually can't navigate, right? They don't want to do it. They're not seeing the result fast enough. So they quit, or they jump ship and they pivot to something completely different. So I have to call you out for it, because I found these posts and I was like, wow, she's still just rocking the same thing. And I love you so much for that in an industry that is so whiplashy. I just got to call you out. So.
Oh, wow. That is one. I love that you went back and dug deep into your saved posts. I got to go do that. I know I have some from yours saved. I literally sent one of your posts to my marketing team. Oh my gosh.
Look at you. Like, so cute.
I miss the days when all you could post is just a cute picture of yourself.
Yep.
You get tons of likes and comments. And I'm like, oh, those were the days. But I literally just sent a post you did to my marketing team. And I was like, I love the style of this. This is my coach. I'm so inspired by this. So the feeling is incredibly mutual, but thank you. I receive that. I'm trying to say receive that.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we talked about a lot this year, especially in the mastermind. And I know James says this all the time, is like, your business is not meant to entertain you. And you constantly drill that into us. And I know you had a similar experience where I kind of lost that for a little bit in the middle there, and definitely went, sideways for a bit. And I always think back, I'm like, well, I was meant to do that. But I wish, woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? That I just kept going, because I came back around, and now we're literally launching a program that's very similar to that. I just did a workshop about content that attracts and reacts. It's like the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think the key is like being able to say it in ways that you find entertaining, that are fun for you. And that, of course, evolve. Like, I can't just post a picture like that anymore and get the same traction, because the Instagram is just different today. So even though it was nice and easy in a way, I'm kind of glad that it's evolved, so that we have to challenge ourselves to say the same thing over and over again, but in a way that works with social media today. So thank you for that. That was really cool.
Yeah, no, perfectly said. That's exactly what it is. And the evolution as it changes, it allows us to innovate. And that was another thing I remember saving of yours, probably also 2019 or 2020 or something. We didn't know each other, for the record. Like, if you're listening, we didn't know each other. we did have a mutual coach. Like we kind of ran through in similar circles, and like we both did network marketing and built those businesses, and we were in health and fitness, and like very similar sort of story, but we had never met ever. We had never talked to each other in the DMs. Like it was not something, but I'd saved a bunch of your content. And the other thing that I saved of yours, which don't worry, I was never going to do it, is you singing. And I think you were doing a launch and you sang Let It Go, but you sang, you changed the words for your launch to whatever it was that you were teaching. And I was like, wow, this woman is brilliant. Like, this is how you innovate. This is how you stand out in a saturated marketplace, because it is saturated, right? So I think that's exactly what you're saying. It's like, how do you make it fun for you to say the same thing over and over and over without getting bored? And it's like, recreate how you're saying it.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like the social media keeps us on our toes. So we have to innovate, because what worked then won't work right now. Same message, but you got to do it differently. So thank you. Yeah. I need to bring those singing posts back. I haven't done one in a while. You just reminded me. I'm going to do one for this next launch. So thank you for that.
Please. Yeah. You know, I definitely miss the days of like Pick Stitch with the Valencia filter where we just like put a picture of our food up.
We don't know how easy we had it. Like I think today, and I'm like, man, it was so easy in some ways. It wasn't easy, but it was, I'm like, damn.
Let's stay on that topic. Photo. Let's stay on that topic for a second, because we've obviously, you and I have had the conversation. The audience and I have had this conversation. 2020 was a unicorn year. It was an anomaly for the coaching industry. And I believe, without making assumptions, it felt easier maybe that year than it did any other year for you. Is that true?
100%. I would say 2019 was the year I like grew the most financially. And then 2020, I think I did a little bit better financially, but not much more. It was like a crazy growth year in 2019, but it felt very, like you said, it felt very easy to get clients, to keep clients, 100%. It definitely did.
So I wasn't planning on going this route, but I would love to talk about the mindset for a second. I'm assuming again that there's been resonance off the last 3 years of maybe it not feeling as easy, or feeling confused or lost, or like, what am I even doing? Or who am I talking to? How have you worked through some of that mindset? Because I know for myself, I definitely have, and I'm sharing more about it now. I believe there's a difference between sharing when something is a scab versus a scar. And for a while it was a scab, and there wasn't enough lesson for me to extract to actually help people. It would just be me coming on to like vent, and that's not helpful. So now I'm starting to share a lot of what I went through in 2021 specifically. What about you? Like, what did you do? How did you work through it?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We had a very similar timeline, I think, too. So like the unicorn year, I love how you put that. So true. The unicorn year for business for me was 2019 and 2020, but it was also the opposite for me in my personal life. So I was like experiencing one thing on social media and to the public and behind the scenes. My marriage was falling apart. My health was being compromised. I was definitely drinking too much. Like so many things were like not at my best. And that's just like a really quick side note, not to assume everyone's having all these things go on behind the scenes, but when you start to compare yourself to these people who have picture perfect lives, you never know what's going on behind the scenes. I had a quote unquote picture perfect life, and it was burning behind the scenes, honestly. And so by the end of 2020, I was working like wild, by the end of 2019, I was working so much. So my husband and I, and this was so much more than just business. We had issues that existed before business, but business always brings the things that we're struggling with to the forefront and forces us to deal with it, whether we want to or not. And so that happened. And basically by the end of the year, we realized we need to separate for a bit. We were working on our marriage for a year with a coach, and it was getting better in some ways, but also we just really needed to spend time apart to work on ourselves. We separated for 6 months. A pandemic hit, did not know that was going to come. And then we got back together, moved into an apartment sight unseen because of the pandemic. And we started to repair a marriage. And a huge piece of that conversation was your business has to change because you're making all this great money, but you're so exhausted. The way I was making it was not sustainable. And the hardest part for me, I knew he was right. I was like 100%. Something has to change. But the hardest part for me was my ego. I was like, I identify as someone who makes this amount and brings this many clients. And if I pull back, I don't have anything to replace it right away. Like I can't work on anything to replace it if I'm working 24/7. I need to just take a hit. And that's like a huge thing. A lot of clients that I work with who do biz remodel work, they're like, well, how do I just replace it right away? I'm like, you don't. You have to be okay with not making that amount for a chunk of time. And so similar to you, after that, I just had this very big like identity crisis in my business. I was like, who am I in this industry? What am I doing if I'm not making a certain amount and can say all this stuff? And I really like just negated everything I did. And I think this is so common. People think if they're not currently doing something incredible that they did a year ago, they can't reference that year ago. You totally can reference that year ago. Like permission, you can keep using that amazing story, even if it's not 100% your reality now.
Right.
And so something at the end of the year that I did, I got rid of a lot of programs, we restructured, and then I made the mistake of throwing my what is it called? We've talked about this before, throwing money at the problem.
Yeah.
I started to throw money at the problem, and I started to say,
there.
okay, let's hire every single person I can. And I hired so many people. It's so embarrassing when I think back. I'm like, wow, didn't do my due diligence in the hiring, hired people who weren't trustworthy, some who were wonderful and great, but also just unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't need it at the time. It wasn't what was going to get me moving forward, but I was desperate to get back to that income. And my profit really suffered that year, obviously. But I think the biggest mindset piece to like answer your question was my ego was going, you cannot identify with how much money you make. That is not your business. Your business and you as a human and your worth is not how much you make.
Yeah.
And it used to be.
Yeah.
So for me, it was really, and I did a lot of coaching, a lot of therapy, a lot of work on this. It was unraveling that connection. And it took years. Like I'm saying honestly, until beginning of 2022, it took like a good 2 years, maybe even mid 2022. I was still so attached to that identity. And until I started to separate myself from that and could separate myself from my business in a way, I was constantly stressed out, comparing myself and just nonstop thinking my business 24/7.
I don't know if you've ever asked yourself this question. Also, I just appreciate your honesty. I don't know if you've ever asked yourself this question. If you haven't, maybe you can just reflect back now and see if you can come up with something. The worth and the identity and the value, right, it's so deep with the ego of I make this much and I can call myself this, and these are the different titles. And I agree with you because I've experienced that as well. But my question for you is, was that initially the carrot that you were chasing? Was it initially like, when I get here, I'll feel worthy? Or were you sort of on this high momentum of like, oh my God, growth, growth, growth. And then when you got it, it was sort of like, if it disappears, then I'm not worthy anymore. Do you understand the question?
100%.
Okay.
It's a great question. I 100% know the answer. It was the latter. So I remember, and that's why it's funny. I think back to 2019, and when I talk about my separation and my husband, it's like, yes, the business contributed, but not as much as I think, because I was on such a high. Like it was more of an escape, I guess, but it wasn't. Anyway, there's so many factors there, but 100% when I started my business and I was scaling quick, I was just so excited about what I was doing. And in fact, I remember the beginning of 2019, I was in a mastermind and a friend in the mastermind with me was like, let's set this big goal. Let's set this big goal of hitting 500K this year. And I said, okay, sure. And I had zero like attachment to it. I was just like, I don't know why I said yes to this goal. It doesn't mean anything to me. It just is a number. But I thought, sure, that sounds like a great number. That sounds crazy. It's double what I made last year. It's more than double. And I said it with her and I literally forgot about it because I had no attachment to it. And I then focused on creating and really loving the offers I was putting out, loving the content, loving the clients. Genuinely, I was like such a naive newbie in a way, even though I wasn't new. I had that newness to my business and I was just so passionate about what I was doing and addicted in a great way. And then it wasn't until I remember this moment so much. It wasn't until I think I hit my first 100K cash month that my coach at the time recognized me up the wazoo, which was beautiful and amazing. And I would do the same for my client today. But I was just like, oh, that's a thing. Like, that's a thing that I should strive for. You know, I didn't even know that like you should strive for that. And all of a sudden, once it became a thing, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And then it switched pretty quick from I'm really in a service mindset to I cannot go below this or I need to beat myself constantly. And that was like the beginning of the down. You know what I mean? So definitely started that way.
Yeah, I'm just so grateful for the conversation. Like, I hope the audience is getting something out of this, but right now I'm like, I am. So thank you for that.
Good.
Because
I'm glad.
as I asked you the question, I felt the same way. If I remember back, and I always say, like, it's kind of like the saying, ignorance is bliss. And I've always said with my business, the more that I learn, the less that I know.
Yeah.
And it was so easy to be detached when you had no data or metrics. It's so easy when there's no baseline. You're like, I'm just going to shoot for the stars. Who cares what I hit? And you're like, wow, that was cool. And I actually remember 2018, 2019 doing the exact same thing where I was gamifying, because at that point, Empower, which is our signature program, was open enrollment. And so I used to just gamify, where it'd be literally every week, I'm like, let's see if I can enroll 2 people this week. Let's see if I can enroll 4 people this week. Let's see. And then there was a moment, and it probably was around the 100K month as well, where you're like, oh, wait, now what if I lose it? And then all of a sudden it like wasn't fun. Like the game wasn't there. It was more, now I'm chasing something as opposed to like creating something.
Yeah.
And I can't lose it. Right. So I just love this conversation. Let's chat for a second. I want to go back. Like, we're going to ping pong all over. Stick with us here today. All right. Don't be afraid to pause, like take notes, do what you need to do. This is going to be a juicy one. You were saying how you were showing up when things behind the scenes were basically burning down, your marriage, your health, this and that. How do you show up when life is happening?
Yeah. Oh, that's a big one. It's one I talk about a lot, because life has happened so much so for us in the past few years. Not only did we separate, we lost my father-in-law, we lost my father, and I had a miscarriage, all within literally like 15 months. So it was just like, wow, I'm getting really good at knowing how to do this, unfortunately. But now I got it down. I know how to do this, right? and now, as we're recording this, I'm pregnant with twins. So it's a happy life event. It's very exciting. But it's, and I know you've shared very publicly, like when you're going through stuff, and I'm very much with you. One of the biggest things, how I personally recommend showing up when life is happening, is sharing from the scar, not the wound. I think that's what you said, or scab. But after you've been able to process, besides like I guess like my father and my father-in-law, it was more like I just literally needed time. But I didn't share about my miscarriage for a bit. And that was just a personal choice. But something that I personally recommend doing, well, one, it's like such a basic tip, and I know it's something you probably talk about constantly, but we forget, is you have to have something prepped if you don't want it to completely disappear. Right. And that really, really helped, because I tend to be someone that I like to create in the moment for certain things. And like, if I'll get an inspo hit, I'll post it that day or the next day. But if I don't have that hit, I want to have something ready to go. And I got into that habit of content planning and having things batched and knowing what we were working on ahead of time. And so for all of those situations, except for my dad passing, I did just take the whole month off social, which I think I needed to do. I had stuff ready to go so that my team, or even if I wanted to, I could just schedule it. And that felt really good, because I was still being consistent with my messaging. I was still bringing in leads. The other thing that I recommend doing is you don't need to share everything with your audience. Like, I think you and I are very open books with our audience. Not everyone's as open book, and you don't need to be. Trust me. There's some days where I'm like, wow, I'm sharing literally everything with my people. TMI, but it's okay.
Tell me more about your cervix.
Yeah, literally, I talk about my cervix on my TikTok, talk about my shortened cervix, no big deal. And, I know that that's like one of my unique methods, is it helps me really connect with my audience, right? I still keep some things private. And so one of the things I know my audience is going to know when I disappear, they're going to be like, what's wrong? Are you okay? What's happening? And so what I like to do when I'm like not ready to quite share is I just say, hey, something's happening right now. We've got to just take a step back, and here's what that's going to look like, whether the podcast will be paused or the email, or we got all our content created. So we're not actually pausing anything, but you might not see me on camera on stories as much, but I'm not going to share details now. Thank you so much for your respect. And when I've done that, which has been a few times, every single time, a flood of love, a flood of messages, which just feels really good for when you're going through stuff, and a lot of respect too. And I can tell that. And the reason I like to say something beyond just disappearing, and I know people will disagree with me with this, and that's okay. I see a lot of people say, you don't owe your audience anything. Disappear. You can disappear. I disagree, because I've created this brand, this business, this income because of that audience. If it wasn't for that audience, I wouldn't be here right now talking to you. And I do think I owe them an explanation. Doesn't have to be the details, doesn't have to be all the juicy stuff and the private stuff, but just like, hey, here's why, because they trust me.
Yeah.
They expect a podcast every Monday. They expect an email every Monday. They expect me to show up on stories. So they get worried and they start to go, oh, can I trust her to show up? That, in my opinion, has helped me stay, I guess, relevant, for lack of a better word, during these tough times. And it's also taken the pressure off of me. So those are just a few things that have really helped me like not show up while showing up when life is happening, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say to the person who doesn't necessarily have a team when you're talking about someone else taking over or posting, or I batched a bunch of stuff and they can kind of just run in and do it for me?
Yeah, great question. You could either prep yourself and pre-schedule. There's lots of apps that you could pre-schedule with. I don't know if they're the best, honestly, for engagement purposes, but you could try those. I've heard that. You could just pop on and just post it and disappear afterwards, right? I know we don't usually recommend that, but you could totally do that. Or you could do what I just said. If you really need this to take a step back, you just let your audience know why, right? And the beautiful thing, though, this is a nod to email and podcasting, is you can pre-schedule all of that. That is something you can have ready to go. And Instagram could just be dormant for a little bit. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. And your email and podcast are lists that you own, which we know, we love, own lists. Yes.
Exactly.
100%.
Yeah.
You're so brilliant as a business coach and as a content creator. I'm just curious because we have very similar opinions, but also we have different opinions, and that's what makes us all unique. And that's something that you actually teach, is having this unique coaching methodology. Wow, I can't speak. Unique coaching.
It's a hard one to say.
Yeah, why couldn't you have made that easier?
I know, I didn't. I record my modules. I'm like, damn, this is a mouthful.
Anyway, UCM, your unique coaching method. So what was my question? Oh, okay. Whenever I have shared something more vulnerable or super personal, or we just had a family emergency and I put up somewhat of a cryptic message, like you said, I said, we have a family emergency. I'm flying home. I don't know when I'll be back. Like, sorry, be back. And I get inundated, like you said, with messages, which is amazing. And I feel so loved and supported and seen and human, right? But the interesting thing is, when you look at your business and your analytics and your engagement and all this stuff, it's like anytime things like that are shared, our ectopic pregnancy, your miscarriage, your marriage stuff, it skyrockets the algorithm because people are really interested in that stuff. How do you personally discern between like, okay, how much am I going to share that stuff? Because it obviously grows the page and like gets great engagement, but then how much do I not really need to share that stuff because it really isn't that aligned with what I'm necessarily selling? Or do you see it as one and the same?
That's such a good question. It's kind of funny. This happened to me 2 weeks ago. I had to go to the hospital for a shortened cervix and we're okay. We're good. The babies are staying put, but it was a scare for 48 hours. And I shared it on my TikTok. Absolutely. And I was like, let me share it on Instagram, because I was literally in the hospital posting stories, but templates, and I wasn't on camera. And I was like, I'm so honest with them. I have to be honest with them. And I explained it, and boom, my story views like quadrupled. I'm like, okay, this is crazy. And so personally, and I did not share this intentionally for this reason, what I'm about to say, but I was like, wow, okay, let me use this. Like, these boys are scaring me and driving me crazy. Let me use this to my advantage for a second. And so I thought, like, how can I relate this back to my business? And one of the biggest things is I had this realization while I was in the hospital, and obviously this can be different for everyone else. If I had to cut everything right then and there, like I was told the babies could come that early. I was 26 weeks, way too early, but it was a possibility, and they've delivered babies earlier than that. So I was like calmish in that sense. I was like, wow, okay, I have to think about some things. And I talked to my team, they started getting things ready. And we were like, all right, if you need to completely stop, I could literally stop right now, not do any of my launches the rest of the year that I have planned, which was going to give us a nice cash cushion for maternity leave. And we'd be okay, because we have so much savings from all of these years of business. And so that was something that I tied in. I said, I had this realization while I was there. And I said, this is why I'm so passionate about helping women build their business. I want you to be able to not have to worry about the health of your babies and your finances. Right. And I tied it back into my workshop. And I wasn't intentionally going to do that. But when I saw the spike, I was like, wait, there's a purpose in this. Let's do it. So if there's a thread you can try to weave it in. The other thing I just do in general is I tend to try to start and end my days, if we're talking stories specifically, with more personal life things to grab people's attention, and then sandwich in more of the business stuff, strategic, et cetera. So hope that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I think you just do such a beautiful job of the personal life stuff too, because, well, you have a brand new Instagram account kind of for funsies right now with your husband, Mike. And
Yeah.
you guys started this podcast and a TikTok and an Instagram all about Meg and Mike Do Marriage. And you grew that Instagram account organically to 9,000 followers in 6 weeks.
Yeah, it's insane. I'm like, what's happening over there? Yeah. I was like, Instagram sucks. The algorithm's horrible. Nothing's working. And then all of a sudden, my second account, I was like, boom, we're just kidding. It's working great, actually.
So let's stick with this for a second, because I know everyone listening to this loves to talk about content and social media. So
Yeah.
was that, do you think, detachment from the outcome? Was it totally energy because you're just having so much fun over there? You're just like not even thinking of turning it into a business? Or was it something actually that you're kind of tactically following or testing?
Yeah, I think it's a combo of it, honestly. I think I really, gosh, unattachment is just the key to everything. It's so hard. It's so hard to do. But we created this going, this is a passion project. And even if we make not 1 cent on this, like, we have quality time making these podcasts. I handle all the social media and my team helps me a little bit with it, but the podcasts are just quality time for us. And I'm like, we're documenting our life. Like, who cares if this makes a cent? This is so fun for us. So we went into it with that mindset, which I think was helpful. And then secondly, I did use a storytelling framework that I do teach and I do use all the time to create really, really engaging storytelling reels. I've done it on my business page, and I've had reels go viral because of that. Right. And so I know how to tell a really good story. And I think I leaned into that a lot, and I mainly posted storytelling reels. And that's what got the influx of people. Like, we had one go to 2.5 million, a bunch over 500,000. Now I'm like, okay, great. Now I got to like nurture these people and not just focus on bringing in new people, because there's only so many times the same people can see my story. They want to learn something too.
Yeah.
So we're kind of doing half and half now. We're doing like a little bit of education. We're getting a lot of questions. I'm listening to the audience. I'm asking them what they want, putting it out there. But it was really a combination of, this is just fun and I'm not putting pressure on it. And it's just amazing how much creativity comes to you when you do that. And I am following like a storytelling process, just telling a good story, essentially.
Yeah. Where'd you learn the storytelling process? Did you create it? Is it from a book, or is it your theater background?
It's kind of a combo. I definitely created the formula. I call it CTC. And it's really like helping take people in, obviously with a hook, walking through a one main theme of your story, so that it's not so scattered and you're not talking about 10 million things. It's like one main takeaway. And talking about your process, your framework, if you're selling an offer. And I still used that for this, but instead the process and framework was getting coaching and getting help and all of that. So, because we don't have our process or framework yet that we're selling, we probably won't ever do anything like that. And then leaving again on one main takeaway. So it was a combination of my own formula, plus I read Stories That Stick by Kendra Hall.
Yes.
Have you read that book?
Yes, that's a good one.
So good. I read that last year and I absolutely loved it. So that definitely influenced a lot of how I tell stories now too.
Yeah. Oh man. I feel like for me, storytelling books, along with like initial money mindset books, were things that I dove into like a decade ago when I really got into personal development. That was a lot of like the gateway books, if you will. And I'm like, now that you're saying it, I should go back and read like Donald Miller, Build a Brand Story, like I read those so long ago. I'm like, yeah, I should go back to some of those.
They're so good.
They are so good.
Stories don't die. Social media might change, but I mean, and fun fact, a little secret, we posted the reel that has 2.5 million views right now. Literally, I posted the same exact reel on Instagram, April 2021, on my regular business page. Same exact reel. Yeah.
How did it do on that page?
It did. It went to like 4 million. It did really well
on your business page.
And this page is 2.5 million. So that actually, my old page did 4.
Wow.
But it's interesting. This is kind of a nice, like, know your niche and stay within your niche, because it did 4 million and I gained 10,000 followers, like same thing. Actually, now that I look at it, I'm like, oh, this reel is magic. Within like a week. but it
Wrong
was all
people.
wrong followers.
Yep.
It was like a
Yep.
bunch of people who wanted marriage advice. And I'm like this business account. I'm like, oh crap. I didn't
Yeah.
think this through.
Yeah.
And not that I regret it because I learned a lot, but it didn't help my engagement. It like
Yeah.
plummeted my engagement. Um,
Totally.
and so after seeing like how much interest that brought in, and then just the one thing I will say is that definitely did help business in a sense where most of the private clients I've signed since then want to remodel their business to balance out their work home life with their marriage. And
Yeah.
because they want to start families, like almost everyone I've worked with, it's been pretty cool. So in that sense, I love it because that's what I love helping people with. But I was like, oh, this is why you need to niche down. And that's also why Megan Mike to Marriage is doing so well. It's
Yes.
so niche. I'm not talking about any business. I said to Mike, I was like, I have 3,000 people viewing my stories. I've never seen that number. This is crazy. Should I just like share about my
Just
workshop
drop a link.
like once? He's like, no, you can't ruin our brand for your personal gain on your business. And I was like, yeah,
He's right though.
that would be bad. And I did poll my audience and I asked, hey, how many people here, like, what do you do for work? Right? Are you an entrepreneur? We both happen to be entrepreneurs. Do you have a traditional 9 to 5? Are you a stay-at-home parent? And like the smallest percentage were entrepreneurs. So it is really separate. And I was like, I'm really glad I didn't drop that link. That would have been really bad. So
Seeing what being super niche has done, because I'm assuming that you started your business super niche as well. And over the time, you've sort of earned your right to go wide. You've expanded similarly again to how I have.
Yeah.
Seeing what being super targeted and niche has done made you think at all about going like a little bit more niche in the business again?
Oh, 100%. It's so funny you say that. I've been thinking about that all week. I'm like, man, how can I apply some of this to my business now? And it's funny, the storytelling is one aspect, and that's more niche, I guess, in skill set and offer. But I'm like, I know how to tell a good story. And I've had people use this and have reels go viral because of that. So I'm like, maybe I should dive into storytelling more and get really niche in that. So it's definitely made me think a lot about that for sure.
Yeah. And it's so easy to say to other people, right, when you're on the outside, but when you look at yourself, like a client, any one of us, if a client told us their niche was, I don't know, XYZ, it's like, no, that's not specific enough. Like get more specific. And it's so easy to like keep pushing and pushing and pushing. But when you look at yourself, you're like, yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I just help everybody. I can help anybody build an online business. If you want a course, you want a membership, high ticket, low ticket, you're a trainer, you're a nutritionist, doesn't matter. And I know for us, that's where our business has grown too. It didn't start there. And recently I actually had someone who I admire so much in the industry, massive, big speaker, big following, just big guy in the industry. And he actually asked me like, oh, so what's your niche? And I was like, well, we help people build businesses and like we specialize in course creation and any service provider, you want to take what you know and turn it into a course or whatever. He's like, so like, what's your niche? And I was like, yeah, so like that's the one. And he was like, you don't help like a specific person. I'm like, well, we did years ago. We only helped fitness professionals, but then like it grew and it expanded. And so I know for us, the conversation we have with the team often is like, should we like go back again to like super targeted something or other? Because you can go so much deeper than you can wide. And there is something even with your messaging where it's quote unquote easier for your messaging because you're just like, I'm just talking to women, I'm just talking to fit pros or whatever it might be. So let's chat business remodel, because I know for you this year, I have the pleasure of working with you, which is so cool. And when you came into our elite mastermind at the beginning of this year, you had just kind of gone through a remodel and then wanted to get into another remodel. First and foremost, I love the messaging and the way that you speak about a business remodel, as opposed to quitting, pivoting, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, or whatever it would be. So is this something that you sort of came up with? Is it how you approach your business all the time? And if so, how do you detach when we're talking about detachment? How do you detach from like, oh, but I spent 6 years, I spent 3 years. I love this program. I built this thing. This is the best, only right way.
Yeah. That's the hardest part is like all that time. And whenever I get that in my head, I go, yeah, but that's like someone who you coach. This happens constantly. I'm sure people listening experience this right now for themselves. Someone went to school for something, went to college, and now they want to create their own business that has nothing to do with what they went to school for. Just because you went to school for 4 years, does that mean you're not going to start this dream? It's like, I always try to remind myself of that, when those moments come.
Yeah.
So when I definitely, to answer your first question, I think it was the first one. I did create this like process by accident, as I think most processes and frameworks are created. Usually it's not usually intentional. And after having a few remodels, the first being after our separation, and then after needing to increase our profit, just point blank, needing to increase our profit after 2021, when it was like, oh my God. And then especially this latest one is finding out we're having twins. I had to really move from a lot of live coaching to really leveraging my group and really leveraging courses. And so 3 remodels, I followed a similar process for all of them. It seems to be working really well. And it's worked really well for clients that I've worked with. But the beginning was like a crapshoot. I was just like trying stuff out, throwing stuff out there. Some things worked, some things didn't. And I found, again, this is kind of like an overarching theme, is you have to, and you said this so beautifully on the podcast that you were on for mine last year. You said, I think you put it pause before the pivot.
Yeah.
I think that's what you said. And so I found that I always need to do that before I change anything. I take a step and I go, okay, what is great? What does not need to be changed? Because so many times I hear people go, I'm burning it all to the ground. I'm burning everything to the ground. And I literally said it worked with a client who I'd worked with before. And she's like, I'm changing so much and I need your help. And I was like, great, let's dive in. She's not changing that much. Like, to her audience, it's like nothing. To her, it's huge. It's like the end of the world, right? And I think we have to realize that, like, on the outside, it actually probably doesn't look that different, but it just feels so different to you because the structure or what you're really focusing on. But you most likely don't need to burn everything to the ground. I have actually never worked with someone in a biz remodel who needed to burn anything to the ground.
Wow.
It was like puzzle pieces. It was like, okay, this doesn't seem to fit anymore. And so we need to find a new piece that works. And so the first step is like auditing, going, what's working great? What do I like? What can I leverage? What's not? What's draining? What needs to change? Again, capacity. You're going to have babies or you want to take time off or whatever it is. And then I go into the P is is programs, profit, and potential. What programs do you currently have? And that kind of goes within your audit. What's bringing the most profit? And then what has the most potential? It might be what's bringing in the most profit. Maybe you could double down, or it might be something that you haven't just like realized yet. And you can really leverage that and work on that. And then the next step was huge for my my profit growth that I had in 2022. We grew a lot profit that year. Sales actually were lower than the year before, but I took home more money. So just remember
Incredible.
that, people. Like,
that's actually the goal.
I used to be so
home.
focused on like, I can say I made this much, but then I didn't actually bring home as much as I wanted. I was like, oh, this doesn't matter. So that was kind of fun. I was like, wow, this is really cool. And one of the biggest things I did was I cut such unnecessary expenses. Like, I am really big, obviously, in investing in mentorship. I've been in your mastermind. I've invested so much mentorship that I never really regret ever. But there were some like outside hires that I just were nice to have, but totally not necessary.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get into that. So really looking at your expenses, what is really serving you, whether it's profit wise or just mentally. Maybe it's just like really helping you show up powerfully, and you can't directly trace it to an ROI, but you know, it kind of got you there. And then the last one is change. What changes need to be made? And that's based on looking at your audit, your profit, your programs, your potential, and your expenses. And I kind of took that route every single time, and it's been working really well. But the biggest thing, like I said, I can't reiterate enough, you probably don't have to burn everything to the ground. So do not do that. I see people do that. I'm like, no, it's gonna be so much harder. Like, don't do that to yourself.
Yeah.
You'll just need to tweak. And I'm going to have something new next year. I know it. I'm going to come back from maternity leave and be like, we're having another slight remodel, you know?
Yeah. Because you don't even know, you don't know what you don't know. So
exactly.
How would you know what to even be building when you're making these changes and these tweaks? Is it one dial at a time, one lever at a time, like one change, lock it in, make sure it's running, and then go to the next and then the next? Or is it just like, okay, we're going to change it all right now?
Go for it all. I normally would recommend one dial at a time for sure, to see like what landed, what didn't. My current situation, I'm kind of doing a lot at once. But it's because of our scenario. Like, I'm taking maternity leave, but you know, even as I say that, it's kind of funny. It's probably more, it doesn't actually probably look like that on the outside, because one of the changes we're making is to a program I currently have. and it's still to the same ideal clients. So that's not even really an outside change. Again, it's more of an internal change behind the scenes. And then we're putting out 2 courses, one I've had before. So actually, now that I say it, from the outside looking in, it's probably one dial. It just feels like a million to me personally.
Can you give an example of something that's internally changing? Because we can't see it. So like, what is actually changing?
Yeah. So I have a group program, and the name of the program is the same. The ideal client for the program is the same. The marketing of the program is pretty much the same. None of that has really changed. I launched it in April. We're launching it, might be actually when this comes out, we might be mid-launch. And so you can kind of see what we're doing and how we're doing it if you're curious, but that all is the same. So on the outside, they're like, oh, this is great. The only thing that's changed for them is the length of the program. We extended it a little bit, the payment plan a little bit, the price a tiny bit, but it's more the way the calls are structured that we changed. We moved around that a little bit, and I added a co-coach, and we removed a couple deliverables that weren't serving anyone and were just unnecessary extra work for the coaches. And then we added some deliverables, but those are such minute details that like only the most analytical buyer would ever even notice on the sales page that was changed.
Sure.
Everything else is pretty much the same to the audience. But for me, those small changes are literally why I can go on maternity leave and have people join this program.
Right.
So it feels huge to me. And I also added some advanced curriculum. And so that took a lot of writing the curriculum, having the team put it together, filming it. So that was a lot of work behind the scenes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. It's like reverse engineering, starting with the end in mind of, I want my life to look like this. And so that's going to require XYZ to happen in the business, right?
Yeah.
When you're doing a business remodel with somebody, are they generally coming to you in the frantic energy of desperation? I need something to change. I'm unhappy, not in alignment, not making money. Or is it more of a proactive, like, hey, I'm thinking about making changes in the future? That's question one. And then question two is, which is better? Like, which would you prefer them to actually be doing?
I'd say the majority are in the frantic stage, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I get it, because I feel like I do that too, where I'm like, help me. I feel like I've done that to you so much this year. I'm like,
no,
I'm like SOS, and it's never SOS. Nothing is ever an emergency. I learned that a long time ago. I remember I had a mentor who said that once, and I was like, boom, that just stuck with me. And I think especially with what we've gone through in the last few years in our personal life, it just puts so much into perspective. I'm like, we'll be fine. Well, business will be fine. If that email was sent wrong, it's okay. Everyone's okay. So frantic for sure. That's the majority of the people. Occasionally I get someone who thinks ahead, and that's the second one. That would be ideal.
Yeah.
And personally, that's my remodel now. So even though I'm on a time crunch because twins literally can come, I'm not due till January 8th, and we're recording this. It's, what is it? October 17th.
Yeah.
They could come anytime. So it's very like, it feels like I have so much spacious, but I kind of don't. So I feel like I'm in a crunch, but I started this remodel plan in July going, all right, we got time. Let's be proactive. Let's not wait till November to figure out our plan.
Right.
Let's figure out our plan now. So if you are, planning for a family or planning for time off, or you want to have a really epic vacation or take a summer off or whatever, start to plan months and months ahead. This stuff takes so much longer than you think it's going to.
Yeah.
Unless you want to burn out. And I literally can't, obviously, while pregnant. So I had to have enough time to really work on things at a slower pace, but a high quality pace. So that would be ideal if you can plan ahead.
Yeah. I'm assuming there's a lot of other planning going on for your business and your life right now. For 2024, you're probably so far planned out, making assumptions of hopefully things will look like this, or if they look like that. Are there certain things in your business that you're going to be putting down or shutting off next year?
So I did pause. I might pick it back up because I love it. And that's why I love being in yours. I love masterminds. I love being in a mastermind. I love having a mastermind. And I was mid-launch for my mastermind when I was like, I don't think I can do this.
Yeah.
And the main reason is it's a year, and it's like they're committing for that. And I would have to come back from maternity leave. And I only gave myself 1 month, and I had a mom go, Meg, you're going to need more than a month.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I have my husband at home. I'm fine. We're good. They're like, nah, you're having 2 and you're going to need more than a month. So I was like, okay, I should probably think about this. And so it was that partly, and I was just listening to my audience. No one was inquiring about the mastermind. Everyone was inquiring about one-off VIP days, one-on-one coaching, custom stuff. I was like, this is really weird. Like these two things are coming at me. So I listened to my audience and I listened to my gut and my friend. And I immediately felt such a wave of relief, because the idea of like having to come back from something I've never experienced before, and I don't know how I'll feel with all of these client contracts for like 9-10 months left.
Right.
That's a big commitment that I just felt, and we're very similar in the sense that I'm going to show up for them and I will push my way through. And I don't think that would have been the best bet for me. I need to like see how I'm going to feel.
Yeah.
So, and that was scary because that's a huge chunk of my income. And so that was,
I was just going to ask you that. So is that something that mindset wise, it hasn't happened yet. So maybe it will happen later when you're experiencing it, but is it something that you've had to work through mindset wise of like, okay, well, I'm now not going to be bringing in, I'm assuming, multiple six figures. And I know that that faucet is turned off next year.
Oh yeah, we've already felt it a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's okay. We planned for this. And I will say, like, obviously we are in a very lucky situation. I don't want to say lucky though, because we worked really hard the last 5, 6, 7 years to be here. It wasn't at a chance, so we've set ourselves up we could make no money for quite a long time and be so okay, more than okay. And so my husband actually joked around that we need to have a ticker all the time on my office wall that says our net worth, because I only look at like the business bank account. I don't see our brokerage. I don't see our SEP. I don't see our house.
Yeah.
Our houses. We have 2 houses.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't actually like look at any of that. And he's like, we're okay. We're more than okay. And you're just looking at like this right now. And it's hard when you're like, that's all you see. And that's, again, it's that identity, but I identify with bringing in a certain amount of money. And so I've really had to look at how can I look at money as not just my business? And that's been huge. There's so many ways to bring in money, so many ways to bring in income. And you created this for a reason. It's okay to take a step back to work on your family, work on your life, and then you can spring forward with even more gusto next year. And that's kind of what I'm doing now, which is felt really good. So
it's so cool to be able to see on a personal level the like mindset shifts and the energy and just how you're approaching life and business from this really like calm. I mean, the first thing that you told me when you told me you were pregnant, you're like, but I'm cool. Like, it's like, I'm pregnant with twins. My dad just passed. This is like awful. I'm going to need to restructure things in the business, but like, I just trust, like, I'm good. I know it's okay. And I do believe that everything happens, as it should in the timing that it should. And there are probably lessons that you needed to learn and challenges you needed to go through in your life and business to get you to a place where just like the emotional intelligence and neutrality that you have about everything, you're like, yeah, I'm just going to turn off a multiple six-figure offer while bringing twins into the world. But like, it's cool. We're fine. It's cool. And I'm like, I just admire it so much. So again, just want to acknowledge you for your growth. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. It's taken a long time to get here. And I have my moments. My husband can attest to that. He's like, you're not always cool. You have your breakdowns occasionally.
Oh, she's human.
So there's definitely moments where I'm like, oh my God, I need to make more money. And again, he's like, the ticker, look at the net worth ticker. I'm just going to keep sending you this, And so but I really do feel that way. I guess like, I don't know. I hear this, like once you have a new, something new just to care about. I remember literally when we got my dog, Luna is like right below me, when we got our dog, and I was just like, I've never loved something so much in my life. Things felt different in business. I literally looked at business differently. And I think the second that I knew we were in this for hopefully the long haul, especially once we found out we were having twins, I was like, all right, like we're going to be so okay. I know we're always going to be taken care of. And there was this piece, which I'm very grateful it's lasted for most of the time, which has been really nice.
Yeah. It's so beautiful to hear too, just as another woman who went through a loss, right? And after having a pregnancy where you have a loss and it can just totally derail you. And there's so much fear and uncertainty and finding out you're pregnant again, or whatever that might look like. So just for anyone listening, it's just, let it be like a flashlight. Let it just be something that you can reflect and see that it's possible. And hopefully, whether it's hope or just evidence of what is possible, because I know that's a huge conversation too, which we don't have the time to get into today, but infertility and loss and all of that, which you and I have talked about as well. Yeah.
100%. That's, that's something like I've shared a lot of my TikTok, my Megan Mike marriage TikTok has become a twin pregnancy TikTok. It's not really about marriage at all. It's kind of interesting how the different audiences are looking at different things. And that's a huge thing I talk about is just the anxiety during pregnancy when you've experienced a loss. And one thing, because this could be a whole other podcast, like you said, we got to wrap it up. But one thing that's really helped me is looking for success stories, is to not just look at like the people who've experienced loss multiple times. And of course that happens, but look at the success stories and have that hope and surround yourself with that. Because right when that happened, I joined a bunch of groups, like Facebook groups to help, and it didn't help. It was like the opposite. It drove me down such a bad rabbit hole. And I was like, I got to get out of here. And so I want that account to be like that inspiration for someone. I was like, well, I can be that now for someone, So I think it's, great that you mentioned that, because it's a whole mind mess for sure.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful part about sharing our vulnerable things, if and when you're ready. Not everyone has to, but it's like, I know for both of us, I was searching for someone who had been through something similar, and to be able to stumble across an account because a reel goes viral or whatever. And you're like, oh my God, this person had a similar experience. And so, to not feel alone.
For sure.
Okay. I don't know how we're at an hour. I feel like we haven't even started yet, but that's okay. You'll just have to come back. Where can people find you? Pimp yourself out. What do you have going on? Share all your socials. Tell us everything. And then we're going to wrap with a couple rapid fire.
Ooh, I love it. Pimp myself out. So you're listening to a podcast. So while you're on this app, you can go search The Pretty Awkward Entrepreneur. That is my podcast. That's probably where my best stuff is, honestly. Like that's the platform I prioritize the most. So that's a fun one. We do a business episode. We do a heart to heart, where it's a lot of what we just talked about, a lot of just like what's going on in real time. And then Instagram is at Megan Yelaney, MEGANYELANEY. And we got a lot going on over there. I think we're mid-launch probably right now, but we've got great freebies over there. We've got so much goodness. So if you go to link in my bio, there's something there. We've got a really cool quiz over there too. So if you want to find out what your unique approach is that we were talking about before, your coaching methodology to get started, I have a really good quiz. If you just DM me quiz, I'll send you the link. But those are the places that we hang out in the biz world, I should say.
Okay. Yeah. I love it. You ready for some rapid fire?
Yeah, let's do it.
So you're a theater gal. What was your favorite role?
Oh, I love this question. My favorite role was a role called Lizzie in a musical called Baby. And she was pregnant. And that was the theme of my baby shower, actually, which was really fun. It's a very obscure show. Not a lot of people know it. Best music ever. So that was actually my favorite role. Second would be Joe in Little Women.
Okay. I love it.
That's probably more known. So
yeah. Little Women for sure. Are you currently reading anything?
Yes, I am reading a couple things. I'm reading a book called 12 Hours in 12 Weeks for babies to get your babies to sleep. I'm also reading, I love Sarah J. Maas. She's like my favorite fiction writer. I'm reading Crescent City, or no, Throne of Glass. I'm sorry. That's the next series I'm going to read. I'm reading Throne of Glass, book 5. And then business, I'm kind of like all over. I'm revisiting Launch by Jeff Walker. I was like, let me just scoop this back up. So kind of always reading a bunch of books at once.
Yeah. You're a Harry Potter fan, right?
Yes.
Big time. Which is your favorite movie?
Movie and book are different.
Okay. Which was your favorite book?
So book is probably 3.
Okay.
Which is Prisoner of Azkaban. I would say movie is probably 4, because I just love the Triwizard Tournament and I think it's fun. So yeah, it's probably it.
You're so cute. I love it. So cute. What is something that you wish people asked you?
Ooh, this is good. Probably, which is funny because I guess, I don't know if it's cheating because now they're asking me, but probably about Mike's and my marriage, because we love talking about it. Yeah. And it's something that we're just so, like, I love business, don't get me wrong, but that has just affected our life in such a huge way. So I'd say about marriage and just how we kind of got through a really rocky point and didn't think we'd make it back. Yeah.
What's something people get wrong about you?
Oh, probably that I am a very big extrovert. They think that. And I think you probably have this too. I feel like we're very similar in this way. I'm very much an outgoing introvert. I would much rather stay home than go out and hang out with people. I love being with people and I get energized by certain people, but smaller groups versus like really big things. So that's something that people are surprised when they meet me.
I am surprised. Although I will say when I did finally meet you in person, you definitely seemed more of an introvert, more reserved than I probably was expecting. So maybe I got that wrong about you for sure.
I'm like in the middle of a show or something, maybe it'll come out, but yeah, usually.
All right, last two questions. Our $50,000 question that we ask everybody. If we were to cut you a check for 50 grand that you had to use in or on your business tomorrow, you could split it up or use it in one lump sum. How would you invest it?
Gosh, these are good. Oh, in my business specifically.
Yeah, in or on?
In or on my business. So this is probably, I don't know if this is throwing money at the problem. I hope it's not, but I have been really, really wanting to dive into Pinterest and blogging and SEO for so long. And I'm just like, I can't do it all. I don't have the time. So I would like really research and do my due diligence and hire the best of the best for that, because we now have rock solid offers, funnels are getting going. So that's what I'd probably do.
Yeah. Oh, wait. So you're saying have an offer that's rock solid first before you go and try to scale? Okay.
100%. Yeah.
All right. Final question. We named the company Digital Business Evolution because I believe we're always evolving and growing, and our businesses are a reflection of that growth. So obviously we know you're about to welcome beautiful twins into the world. What is your next personal or business evolution that we might not know about?
Ooh, yeah, that's a big one. It's the twins. Honestly, we talked about it. I hope it's not cheating, but Meg and Mike Do Marriage was kind of this like in the back of our head thing for years. Like the last 2 years, we've been talking about doing this, and we finally were like, we can't not do this. We need to just, we did it at the busiest moment. And now as it's starting to take off, I'm like, I could see this being pretty big. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't have the exact vision yet, but I could see this being a pretty big thing. So that's really what we're leaning into next, is just continuing to build that brand.
I love that. I'm so excited for you guys. And I just love watching all of it unfold. And I can't wait to welcome these little guys into the universe, into the earth side. All right, my friends, if you love this episode, which I know you did, and there was something in it that you grabbed onto, something that shifted for you, something that made you just want to hit the pause button or share it with a friend, do Meg and I a favor, take a screenshot of the episode, share it out on social media, tag her at Megan Yelaney. That's Megan with no H. Tag me at I am Jessica DeRose. Let us know what some of your biggest takeaways were, or what that moment was that you just grasped onto, so that we can continue to provide more juicy content like this and connect with you in our DMs. And personally, thank you for listening. As always, friends, cheers to your evolution. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you loved this episode, I invite you to be a part of our ripple effect and share it with a friend. And please, if you feel called, take 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review, and I'll be forever grateful. Until next time, cheers to your evolution.